morning, Dakota.
We are back for another week of Chapter Chat, and
Woo.
this week we have a new guest star, Jules.
Yeah, it's wonderful to be here. It's going to be fun.
We had a really fun book this month, The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. And this book was a very anticipated book
Yes.
of last year.
I heard that she spent 10 years writing it.
Yes. Which is pretty intense. What did you think of the book? Let's talk a little bit about the summary of the book and what we thought about it.
Sure, yes. So the protagonist is a young woman named Addie LaRue, and she is living hundreds of years ago, about 300 years ago. And she ends up being in kind of an arranged marriage, and she is not about it. She is not interested, and she's thinking, what can I do to escape this situation? And she ends up making kind of a deal with the devil, or a devil.
A devil of some
Yes.
sort, a devilish god of some sort.
Yes, that shows up after the sun has gone down. So she makes her wish. She wishes that she would not be bound to other people's expectations, that she could live an independent life and make her own choices. And like many wishes that you make, there is a huge catch for her. The catch is that she's free to make all of her own choices, but no one will remember her.
Will ever remember you. And that is the thing, if you think about that for a second, going through life every day, we take for granted that I'm going to come to work tomorrow and you're still going to remember me. Somebody's going to hire me for a job. They're going to remember me the next day. To go through life every day for hundreds of years and no one remembers you.
That's rough. And it's not just that other people don't remember her. There's no way for her to leave a mark on the world. She can't draw in the fog on a window pane. She can't paint. She can't write.
Her hair, like nothing changed. She's just the same person every day for hundreds of years. And not just that, but going back in time when she's in the future but visits home, her family doesn't remember her.
Yes.
She's been completely erased from their memories.
Yeah, really steep cost on this wish, for sure.
But, one day, somebody remembers her.
Yes, it's very exciting when you reach that point.
Because she is in the bookstore, she had stolen a book and gotten caught a couple days before, and she thinks she can go right back in because it's kind of how she's been able to get through life. You can steal something from the market one day, no one remembers you the next day, so you just kind of get really good at stealing things and learn better ways to do it. But then he says, Addie, and she kind of like perks up almost as if like, she like so many times she had practiced her name so that she wouldn't forget it because no one else remembers it. I am Addie LaRue. I am Addie LaRue. I am Addie LaRue, which I also thought was, to say that to yourself over and over so that you just remember who you are for 300 years. Because it's in the 2004? It jumps,
I think so.
Jumps forward to like almost present day.
There's some jumping.
Back and forth. Yeah, it's pretty exciting.
Yes, yeah. Finally find someone who remembers her, has another romance. There's a few romances that happen in this book, of course, kind of challenging since many of them are one-night stands, since the person won't remember her the next day.
Yeah, I think it's, I think that's a pretty interesting part of it. And then from there, let's talk about her relationship from that point on. So then, she hangs out with his friends, and can you imagine starting a love interest with someone and then their friends don't remember you?
Every time.
Every single time. Because she hasn't told her secret yet about how no one remembers her except him, which I think is kind of funny.
Awkward.
Where the friends are like, hi, nice to meet you, I'm so excited. And he's like, you just met her yesterday, what are you talking about?
What's happening?
So at one point then she has to explain her secret and the deal with the devil that she made. Devilish god. Yeah, so it was a pretty good, did you like the book?
I did. I was able to read it pretty quickly. I got really attached to the story. I wanted to know how is this going to resolve because it's a huge setup. What what can happen once this happens. So I was reading it to find out how it ended, for sure.
I did feel like it was, I mean, she did spend 10 years writing this book, but I felt like it was very wordy. Like every little part of the components that she would add in, she would draw out, which builds up a lot more of anticipation because you're like,
It does.
how is this going to end? I mean, because it's a pretty big book. But overall, I thought it was very well written. The storyline of it, I really liked it.
Yeah, I think she did a great job paying attention to the details of the curse and the fallbacks of immortality. Like the fact that she can't even cut her own hair. She can't even effectively stab someone at one point. Like she's in a situation where she gets attacked and she, is defending herself and she stabs someone and then runs away. And a couple minutes later, like the wound just starts healing itself and the guys are like, wait, why are we out here?
Like
That was...
Can't leave her mark in any way, shape, or form.
Anyway, so yeah, I think she thought the details of the curse out really well to have details like that.
Yeah, I thought it was, I mean, again, I'm not a fiction reader to begin with, or a fantasy fiction reader, but I did think that there were a lot of elements of this story that were pretty good overall. And then the ending, spoiler alerts.
Spoilers.
If you don't want to know, close your ears. What did you think of the ending?
The ending,
Did it catch you off guard, or did you kind of think that maybe that was going to happen?
I thought that might be the way that she would go. So she ends up with a choice. Turns out love interest Henry has also made a deal with this shady character.
Which is why he also, can remember her. And that's the only other character that we meet in the book that has also made a deal with the devil. And she happens to have the love interest. But
yeah, his deal is he is not long for this world, but she's in love with him, but she also, still wants to continue with her adventure of life. And she ends up making a deal. Okay, I'll hang out with you, shady Luke. Luke.
We'll go with Luke.
So she's like, all right, Luke, I will, hang out with you and be your gal Friday if you let this guy continue to live. And I liked that.
Because he was more, I think that was, she has lived for 300 years.
Yeah.
She's seen a lot, she's done, but he was in present day. Like, it wasn't too long ago that he made this deal. And so he already has established friends, relationships. Like, I feel as though I didn't expect it to end that way, to kind of trade off, but I also thought it was good. I thought it was, like, now I hope, maybe there'll be another book. Maybe he'll have a happy life.
Right.
But I thought that was pretty good. But they kind of just leave you hanging on Addie at the end. It's like, what's going to happen with Luke?
Yeah, that's a good point, because she's not leaving Henry adrift or anything. He's got ties and he's got stuff that he's working on. I like that she is going to end up tricking shady guy Luke again. She's just so stubborn, and she's in it for the long haul. And I was like, you go, girl.
But in the end, we do get sort of our happy ending where he's writing down her stories and publishes this book, because in the end she finally gets her mark. No one knows that it's actually a true story, but in some way, after all of that, she finally gets to leave a mark, because for this whole time she's led an invisible life. So kind of, interesting how that turned out.
Yeah, good way to tie it all up.
So we have gone over what we feel this book was about, but let's go over some reviews and see how other people thought that this book was. The good, the bad, and the ugly. I always like to start off with my ugly ones, the good, the bad ones. So, 1 star. It took V.E. Schwab almost 10 years to write this book. If I didn't have the audiobook, that's probably how long it would have taken for me to read it.
Harsh.
Very harsh. Oof. 3 stars. A lovely idea, but disappointed by the lack of depth. And I kind of thought about that one but there weren't, I guess, I mean, there's the protagonist, but there aren't many other characters involved.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that's what they mean by lack of depth, or maybe because she was here for 300 years and you don't hear her talking about traveling to other countries or traveling here or traveling. I mean, think about what you could have done with all the time, but we don't ever really hear about much of that.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that's what
That's fair.
they meant. I'm not really sure. And then 5 stars. This will be one for the ages. It's a little mix of both.
Yeah.
What, did you find any?
Ooh, yes, I've got some reviews as well. I will also start with the ugly.
The ugly one.
The ugly. This one was written by someone named Matthew. I'm 50% in and ready to did not finish. These characters are boring and stupid. How could such a cool premise be done so poorly? What a waste. Henry is a pathetic dumb man-child, and Addie is a 300-year-old teenager who apparently has not grown at all in her 300 years.
That was pretty harsh.
It is very harsh. And there were some complaints I saw as I was going through the views that Addie is, really stubborn, kind of like a teenager. But, I mean, to survive what she has survived, stubborn, I feel like is a feature,
It's like
not a bug.
defense mechanism
Yeah.
almost. Like, I mean, for how many years no one ever remembers her, so every day I'd be kind of a curmudgeon too, I think.
Absolutely.
Like no real relationships.
Mm-hmm.
Poor,
So yeah.
poor Addie.
Understandable. And then a good one, Are You Kidding Me? This book wrecked me. This is by Gabby. I feel like this book was written for me because Addie is just the most relatable, independent, bad B word. And the way she talks about how much she loves books, movies, and New York City, yeah, that's basically my brand. So many people found Addie relatable.
Relatable.
Yes.
This is basically my brand.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of like it.
Yeah, well, I mean, many people love books.
Mm-hmm.
So it's nice to see that the romantic interest works in a bookshop and they kind of bond over books.
Yeah, I did like that element
Mm-hmm.
of that. It was pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. Well, how about we dig down here into our fishbowl? Some questions.
Excitement.
Da-da-da-da.
I mean, it could be anything.
It could be anything. Ooh, this is a good one. If you could have the potential to live forever, would you take it?
Answer in the comments. I would probably say no. And I used to think of myself as a fairly independent person. I enjoy my solitude.
Mm-hmm.
I value it. But I found out during the pandemic and the lockdown, being at home alone, that I do actually need people very much. I found out things about myself.
Survive on my own.
So yeah, to be immortal would be great for a while, but then you would see all of your loved ones pass on.
Yeah.
So that would be a challenge for me.
Hard.
How about for you?
I completely agree. I think that, making this life worth living is, one way to look at it, but being, not aging and seeing all of my loved ones age, I don't know if I could do it. And then leave. And if I were in her circumstances where no one would remember me,
Mm-hmm.
I too need people, so I don't think I could do it. And you're right, if anything taught me that, it was 2020.
Oh, 2020.
2020. Let's see what else we have in here. Also a good one. Do you think Henry and Addie were truly in love or just bonded by their circumstances?
That is a good question. I do feel like it is slightly circumstantial. Her options are so limited.
I agree.
Yeah.
I think that it was very circumstantial, and I think that he he also clung to her much more after she sort of explains her circumstances to him because they are bonded by the same circumstances.
Yeah.
So I think it was, and you hear both of them talk about previous love interests, and I don't know, you made it, I felt like they were, over the moon with those love interests, and I felt that they could share that they were both over the moon in previous ones, but that circumstances were really I think so, which maybe made it how she was so easy to let go in the end, I think.
Right, yeah. I know Luke was hoping that it would break her, that she would be so devastated by this that she would, do whatever he wanted.
And she wasn't.
She wasn't?
She wasn't. So I think it was circumstantial love.
Yeah, kind of like crisis romance.
I think so. All right. What about, let's see, some books. So a lot of people loved this book.
A lot of people.
A lot of people, absolutely. I mean, if you look on Goodreads or Amazon or any reviews, it is like almost 5 stars, and people just loved this book. If people loved this book, do you have any recommendations for other books that they might like?
Yes, indeed.
I already see one that I know I love.
I would recommend first Una, Out of Order. I read this for the first time last year and I loved it. This also has kind of a time travel element to it and a romance, but in this premise, the woman jumps back and forth between ages in her life. So her, consciousness progresses linearly, but she jumps back into her life at weird moments, like suddenly she'll be 18, and then on New Year's Day, bloop, now she's 35, and then bloop, now she's 22.
So she lives her life just out of order.
Yes, and I loved it. It makes you really appreciate each step of your life with a new perspective now that you know what you're going to be missing later. Yeah, so this one's terrific. And then you can't talk about time travel romance without talking about Outlander. Very popular, of course, also a TV series now. And this one is time travel back to, what did you say, medieval?
Medieval times, I think.
Yep, so that is a very exciting romance across time.
Yeah, I think that one really brought time travel-ish to life, I think, or like a really popular. So a lot of people, like myself, might not have thought that I liked fantasy fiction.
Yeah.
And then you read the Outlander series and watch the series, and you're like, I kind of like this.
Awesome.
I think that one kind of brings it to light. So I recommend it if you haven't read that one yet. It's pretty good. Oh, and this one, which is not a book.
No, this one is a film called The Age of Adeline. We do have it in our collection. I haven't watched this one yet. Have you seen it?
I loved it. And I also looked to see if it was a book, and it is not a book. Because, a lot of movies are based on books. Not this one. I loved it. She also, she never ages, so very similar to Addie, until one day somebody remembers her. And I thought that one was more captivating, in my opinion, because she does travel around to a lot of places. So we didn't actually see that in Addie LaRue. I mean, she talks about France, but that's where she grew up. But you don't hear her going to like Australia or all the fun places that you could go for hundreds and hundreds of years and go unnoticed.
Yeah, go hike the Andes.
Yeah. But people actually do remember her. That's the only difference, is that she can be remembered, and that's why she travels around so much. But I loved that DVD.
Yeah, so another great option. And what have you got over there?
So, if you've watched Chapter 4, you know that I am not a fantasy fiction reader, but we do have this handy-dandy database called Novelist, and you can access it from our website. If you don't know how to access it, we're always here to help you figure it out. And you type in any book that you want, and it gives you some recommendations on other reads that you might enjoy, and it breaks it down to, if you liked the fantasy element, you might like this. If you liked the romance or the historical elements, this book might be more of it. And so it brought up The Bear and the Nightingale by Catherine Arden. Have you read this book?
I have read it, and I have given it to like 3 of my friends. I would highly recommend this one.
But this one popped up as, I think, the second one that you, that would most relate to it. But you said it's not, is there immortality in this one?
A couple of the characters are immortal. The protagonist isn't. It is very fantasy-based, but a lot of great relationships.
And this
Incredible book.
one's in Russia.
Yes.
Right, okay.
Mhm.
So this one popped up as one that you might like. This one also popped up, The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. Have you read this one as well?
I have. I really like this one. More of a focus on the romance and some really fun, fantastical elements. And I remember the romance having like problems or limits associated with it, kind of like with Addie LaRue.
With Addie LaRue as well. So this one also popped up. So if you did like Addie LaRue, novelist also thinks, and Jules as well, that you would like these 2 books.
And what if you really did not like Addie
If
LaRue?
you really did not like
If you
Addie
thought
LaRue,
that it would take you 10 years to read
to
it.
read this book, and though I do read all of these books, I think it's great to get out of your comfort zone a little with your reading, because we get so set in the genres that we prefer. I'm more of a nonfiction reader. It's just what I prefer. But next month, we've got some books for you. If you really just thought that it would take you 10 years to read this, join us next month in July for The Feather Thief. I know, it sounds bizarre. By Kirk Wallace Johnson. And this one is about feathers and people's obsessions with feathers for fly fishing. It also throws that element in. There's a heist, and I won't go into any more detail. You'll have to read it and come back to us the second Saturday in July.
Yeah. Yeah, well, a heist and fly fishing, that's good for summer, right?
A heist, fly fishing, feathers. I know you're intrigued, as you should be. So I highly suggest you pick up this book. We have it on Libby, Overdrive. We have the audiobook, the ebook version. We have the large print version here. We also have a couple other copies. So pick up this book and join us this second Saturday in July at 9 a.m. on Facebook Live. We'll be talking about this book. And in August, Jules is going to be joining us again. And we will announce, and we'll put it on Facebook, and also we'll be promoting more books in advance so that you have time to actually read them and get your copy before we do it. August, we are going to do The Giver of Stars by JoJo Moyes. And she was also the author of Me Before You. And so that one has a librarian element. How could we?
We couldn't refuse.
We couldn't
Whenever we're
refuse.
trying to figure out which book, if it's got librarians in it, it goes to the top of the
It's
list.
a priority.
Yeah.
And there have been a lot of new books that came out that have librarian elements or bookmobiles, traveling libraries, or librarians on horseback.
Very hot right now.
So those are the next 2 books. Pick them up. So if you really did not like Addie LaRue, you might like The Feather Thief by Kirk Wallace Johnson. And if you just love librarians, JoJo Moyes, The Giver of Stars for August. All right.
Yeah.
Well, let's see if any other people have comments, questions, concerns, news we can use. Doesn't look like it. But if you do have any questions, you can watch this, drop a comment later. We'll always, if you have some questions that you want to know more about pertaining to last month's book, this month's book, next month, drop them in the comments. We'll put them in our fishbowl, and we'll go over them next time.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks for tuning in, guys. We'll see you next month. We should probably look at the date to confirm it.
Sometime
The second,
next month.
it is July 10th Saturday, July 10th. Grab your coffee,
Mhm.
in your PJs if you want. Tune
Yeah,
in
we don't
with all
mind.
your comments, questions about the Feather Thief. I wasn't able to put it down, and I hope it will be the same for you too.
It's a good one, yeah.
We'll see you next month. Bye.